What's going on? What's crack-a-lackin', my peoples, how you doing? I'm Jerry Quickley, and this is happening. I could not be more excited that you're joining us today as once again, together, hand in hand, we take a walk through this fetid swamp called Trumplandia as we try to emerge out of the other side. But guess what? It's going to get worse before it gets better. We can't go back. They burn the canoes. We have to walk through the swamp. We're going to do this together. Don't worry about the sawgrass or the gators or anything else. Today we're going to be talking about what's happening across the mainstream media news landscape. Trump spoke to a group of veterans of foreign wars today and essentially said, hey, don't believe anything in the media. Whatever they're telling you is a lie. That's not what's really happening. Literally, the President of the United States is saying that there is no truth or reality in what American media brings. That they're lying. They can't be trusted. Who benefits if Donald Trump convinces America that no American media can be trusted? He didn't say, well, you can't believe this reporter. She's a liar, or he's the worst. I have documented evidence of this reporter getting it wrong on 28 separate occasions. You can't believe this reporter. That's not what he's saying. He's saying none of them can be believed. Okay, he might as well say those Jews, or those blacks, or those Puerto Ricans, or those Muslims, or whatever other group he wants to paint with the same broad brushstroke. You can't believe that. Look, it came out of the mouth of a black. That's where Donald Trump is right now with American media. So we're going to be visiting across the mainstream media landscape. We're going to be getting into all that and more, as well as a super cray Sarah Huckabee Sanders Trump presser that happened yesterday. We're still unpacking that. All that and more. But I'm excited. You know why? Because it's Tuesday and I'm here with you. Let's get it cracking. You know what's going on. What's going on? What's crack-a-lackin', my peoples, how you doing? I'm Jerry Quickley. Welcome back to This Is Happening. Going to be taking your calls here with me this hour. Call at 1-818-985-5735. Again, that's 818-985-KPFK. What do you think about Donald Trump telling American citizens that they literally, not that they should be suspect of what they read or see, or they should cross-check it with other sources and forms of information. No, that's not what Donald Trump is saying. What Donald Trump is saying is that anyone who works for the media is a determined liar, and nothing that comes from American media can be believed. Sounds like someone with a media problem. If they're literally, you're trying, here you have a sitting president of the United States trying to invalidate all U.S. media. He might, like I said, he might as well say, well, you can't believe them. Why? They're Jewish. You can't believe them. Why? They're black. You can't believe them. Why? They're Puerto Rican. You can't believe them. Why? They're the media. It's ridiculous. Taking your calls, 818-985-5735. That's 818-985-KPFK. I'm Jerry Quickley. This is happening. First up, let's give a listen to this clip. This is a Wolf Blitzer earlier today on CNN, and you're going to hear from Gloria Borger here. Trump says, don't believe the media.
Just stick with us. Don't believe the crap you see from these people, the fake news. Just remember, what you're seeing and what you're reading is not what's happening.
What do you make of that kind of language by the President of the United States, especially before a VFW convention?
Well, it's completely inappropriate, but it's also completely expected from Donald Trump. I mean, this isn't the first time we've heard him talk about the fake news. I think what was really interesting was this afternoon, the manager of communications and public affairs for the VFW put out a statement saying that we were disappointed to hear some of our members boo the press. We rely on the media to help spread the VFW's message, and then went on and listed a number of networks, including our own, saying they were our invited guests, and we were happy to have them there. So good for them for doing that.
Yeah, and look, I mean, it's Orwellian. It's Orwellian.
Yeah, to say the least. That was Wolf Blitzer on CNN today, and you're from Gloria Borgia, and also from the orange, greasy crumbs in the sheet, stained Manchurian pumpkin candidate doofosaurus rapist in chief, a.k.a. Donald Trump. You also heard from him in that clip. And we're taking your calls, 818-985-5735. That's 818-985-KPFK. And first up, let's talk to Rio. Rio's calling from Los Angeles. Rio, welcome to the show. What's the dealio?
How you doing, Jerry?
Good.
Hey, man, look, I'm glad you're back. You've been gone for a while.
Thanks,
I'm glad
brother.
you're back.
Glad to be back.
Yeah, and now let's go back to about 6 or 7 years ago.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask you this question, Jerry, and you answer it honestly, please.
Okay.
If I was to tell you that your president, how would you?
I'm sorry, you clipped out for a second there. If you were to tell me what, Rio?
If Donald Trump 6 or 7 years ago said, "Hey Jerry, you think Donald Trump would be your president?"
No, I actually would have been really shocked and surprised. But I'm wrong about all that stuff, right? Because when Obama was running, I said, there ain't no way in hell Obama's going to be president. In the first place, he black. In the second place, his first name is Barack. In the third place, his middle name is Hussein. In the fourth place, his last name is Obama. Okay, I was like, there's no way this racist country is ready to elect a black man named Barack Hussein Obama to be president. So, of course, I couldn't have been more wrong. I was 100% wrong then. I'll probably be wrong now with any prediction I make. So, if you asked me 6 or 7 years ago, could Donald Trump be president? I say it remote and unlikely, but you never know. And the only reason I would say remote and unlikely, but you never know, because Donald Trump is a billionaire racist, and you never know. There's no limits if you're a billionaire racist in America. You could be president. You could be the most talentless. You could literally have ruined your family's business over and over again, declared bankruptcy multiple times, be an admitted rapist, be an admitted pedophile, and destroy people's lives with your business practices. And if you're a white racist who's a billionaire, you can still be president.
Yeah, well, if somebody would have told me that Donald Trump was going to be the president, I would have told them you are crazy.
Right. Me too.
And look what we got. And, I was listening to you yesterday, and the one guy came on that kept talking about, Jerry, you're speaking about racism too much, and this and that. And I'm like, and I'm glad you said what you said afterwards, that, we can't care about people being sensitive.
Yeah, we can't have discussion. Everyone right now, America and the rest of the planet, is in the potentially lethal grip of Donald Trump. And as we have these public discussions, and as we communicate with each other, and as we collaborate about ways to move forward safely, we cannot have that communication and collaboration clouded with trying to appease the fragile sensitivity of someone. I cannot take time when I'm talking about white supremacists to give some rambling preamble like, well, when I say white supremacists, I don't mean all white people. I mean, I never said all white people. I said white supremacists. We cannot spend our time catering to the butthurt feelings of white progressives who want to make sure whenever we talk about white supremacists that white progressives are held out separate and different. No, I'm not. If I said if I said progressive, I'm talking about you. If I said white supremacist, I'm talking about white supremacists. We can't spend our time catering to people's fragile sensibilities. There's too much work to be done. There's too much risk. We've been pushed too far to the brink. We have too much to do to be worried about people responding to, oh, well, I didn't like it when he said that white people brought us this horror. Yeah, white people brought us the horror of Donald Trump. You goddamn right, white people brought us this horror. More specifically, racist white people. But let's be clear, there's not another group. If every other group in this country banded together and voted for Trump unanimously, he would have lost without white support. You understand? White people supported him in the majority. Trump is the white supremacy president. And the net is we have too much work to do to cater to people who are uncomfortable talking about issues of race, because what we're going to do is spend time addressing their feelings and not fixing what needs to be fixed. And the stakes are too big. There's too much at risk. There's too much work that needs to be done. F your feelings. Let's put in work.
And you're right about that. And one last thing so I can let other people talk. Are you familiar with Neely Fuller?
Mimi Fuller, no.
Neely Fuller. Neely.
No, I'm not, sir.
Okay, well, I encourage you to listen to him because you're right there with him as far as talking about racism. You know Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. You're familiar with her, right?
I have heard of her, but I'm not deeply familiar with her work.
Okay, well, I encourage you and the listeners to check out Neely Fuller Jr. and Frances Cress Welsing.
Okay.
Excellent people when it comes to describing white supremacy racism.
Well, Rio, I appreciate the info on those new folks. I'll definitely peep out some of their work, and thanks for calling and spreading the light, brother. Appreciate hearing from you. Given we're talking to y'all all, give us a ring at 818-985-5735. Again, the phone number here is 818-985-KPFK. I want to play another clip. This is more madness from, people responding to Trump's craziness. Let's give a listen to this next clip. This is from CNN. You'll hear from Dana Bash and Wolf Blitzer. Again, Trump talking about don't believe the media.
The idea that he's saying, don't believe what you see, don't believe what you hear, nothing to look at, the only truth is me. It's dangerous. It really is. And I know we have said this so many times, but it's important to keep pointing it out because it's not normal and it's not accurate. And the issue is, and the reason it's dangerous is because the more he says it to the base and to people who do genuinely believe everything he says, the more it doesn't just chip away at the institution of the press and other institutions that are important. It really takes a sledgehammer to them. And it's not going to be that easy to put it back together.
Yeah. Charles Blow sent out a tweet last week that says, whenever happens at the end of the Trump administration, it is going to be horrific and ugly because there's too many people that have invested too much in the Trump administration. And when he is gone, they're going to be exposed for being the racist cretins they are, the apostasy. Basically, all of Trump's supporters are going to be left out there in the wind, ass out, swinging in the wind when you rip away Trump. If Trump's new standard of racism is not allowed to stand, everyone who supported it is in danger of losing their jobs, their friends, their community, and everything else. This is a president that has convinced the majority of white people to embrace white supremacy, and double down on it. Because if they lose their leader, they will be exposed for the Klan men and women that they are. Taking your calls here at 818-985-5735. That's 818-985-KPFK. Next up, let's talk to Lawrence calling from L.A. Lawrence, welcome to the show. What's the deal?
Hey, what's up, Jerry? How you doing?
Good. How you doing, buddy?
Good. The genie's out of the bottle, man.
Yeah.
When he's telling military and he's holding press conferences saying that not to believe the media, and he's been saying this for a while, but this is not anything new. We've seen it played out in the courts when we've had videotape of several black men unarmed, and then when it goes to trial, that person that's dead, the person that did it, it didn't happen, but the person's dead, but it's on tape. So it really comes out to don't believe your lying eyes.
Right.
So the media has been playing along with this message for the longest.
You're absolutely right. In the media, in their support of white supremacy, has created a hackable structure that the Republicans have figured out how to hack. What the Republicans were able to figure out was, look, the media is so timid, it doesn't matter what we say. We can go on their programs and make any outrageous claim, and we'll dare them to cut our mics or not invite us back. And they're so timid and so shook about being accused of being in the tank for the Democrats that the media will allow us to come on and tell demonstrable lie after demonstrable lie, and will continue to come on. And by doing so, by telling the same 5 lies over and over and over 1,500 times a day, we will impact the American news cycle. Okay? The Republicans figured out how to hack U.S. media, and the spineless cretins that run mainstream media are so attached to their daily paychecks and maintaining the status quo that they lack all ability, nimbleness, foresight, prescience, and competence to maneuver U.S. media out of the garbage fire they've created.
Definitely, but, even more to that, the media has become this insatiable drug. And so much so that, people are willing to, totally suspend any sense of reality and justice when it comes to how justice is meted out to black people, people of color. And even when you talk about, look what's happening, to Puerto Rico, Houston, New Orleans. I mean, these are, disasters.
If the media was, you're totally right, Lawrence. If the media was doing its job correctly, there's no way that an entire country of people could be sitting on their asses watching over 1,000 people be murdered, unarmed, innocent people be murdered in the streets every year. No one ever go to jail, no significant protests, no police stations being burned down, no riots, no uprising, no rebellion. That's because we're given a curated diet from the media that says, it's okay, you can kill them, it's only niggers.
Jerry, I have a request.
Sure.
It's your show, it's beautiful, love it. Maybe at the end of the week, sometime during the week, let's put out what it is, our accomplishments. Sure. I know, this is a long journey. We do have to have patience. So along the way, we need reminders of what we've done.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good idea. I'll see what we can do to be a little more proactive and timely and consistent in framing the victories, because there have been many, many victories that progressives have achieved during the Trump administration, but they tend to be overshadowed by the burning dumpster fire that we're all living in.
But see, that's part of the strategy.
Right.
Stay focused on the chaos, and what's good gets, like you just said, overshadowed, and people get overwhelmed because what they're focused on, that's going to happen. But the tsunami of change is only going to be fueled, by that constant reminder. Yes, things are happening.
For sure. Lawrence, that's a great idea, man. I appreciate the idea, and thank you so much for the call. Thanks for listening so closely, brother. Taking your calls here, 818-985-5735. Again, the phone number here is 818-985-KPFK. Let's give a listen to this next clip from, this is also from CNN, where their analyst, Bianna Goldriga, says that, this Trump saying don't believe the media is kind of a problem.
Bianna, I know you want to weigh in. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say the irony of all of this is that you have a president who watches TV and follows the press more rigorously than most presidents that we've covered in modern history. He tweets in response to what he reads on the news. So on the one hand, look, it works in many respects. He tweets about the Mueller investigation, calling it a witch hunt on a daily basis, and you see the poll numbers suggesting that more Americans are now starting to question whether Bob Mueller can be objective in throughout this process. So on the one hand, it seems to be working for the president. On the other hand, it makes no sense, and it's something that we see, and we talk about this on a daily basis as well, but it's something that we see other leaders of dictatorial countries do.
Next up, let's talk to Bob calling from Gardena. Bob, welcome to the show. What's the dealio?
Hey, Jerry, thanks for taking the call. Unfortunately, there is a lot of fake news, and, of course, Trump trumps all the fake news. But the problem is that Wolf Blitzer is a prime example of somebody who propagandizes for invasion occupations and all the other things that we do, and I don't know why he's a constant source.
Well, you know, you're right. You won't find me defending Wolf Blitzer's gerrymandered sameness. Okay, he is a company man, and there's nothing interesting that essentially ever happens on his show that he is the source of. However, it is, I think, worthwhile at least peeking in and having a window on the conversation that mainstream media is having around issues like Trump calling out the media, because here you have Trump essentially trying to liquefy Wolf Blitzer and his entire industry. And I wanted to know whether or not they will continue to be as tepid and as spineless and as feckless and as shambling as they have been to date. And the they I'm talking about is Wolf Blitzer, Jake Tepper, and the rest of mainstream media. And while we should not be using them as a guide stick or a yardstick to suggest where we are, I think that because of the power they continue to wield, we should at least be aware of some key critical moments in our descent.
Yeah, I think he's there to discredit everything besides his lies, and that's part of being a fascist and part of discrediting everything else that tells the truth about him.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for the call, but I appreciate hearing from you, Mike. I'm sorry, Bob. Let me see. Next up, let's talk to Dean. Dean's calling from Fullerton. Dean, welcome to the show. What's the dealio?
Hi, Jerry. How are you today?
Good, thanks.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, pretty good. Oh, gosh, I'm trying to collect up all my thoughts while I was on hold, and I've done the best I could. Regarding Obama, I have a different point of view that I haven't heard said yet. And it is a very subtle thought or a subtle perception that possibly Obama was put in office to stoke the fires of white supremacists.
When you say he was put in office, that suggests that there was that Obama was attained office.
Part of a plan.
Was part of, okay. Who was leading this plan?
I don't know, but the Federal Reserve Board is behind this.
Okay, so
you
won't share who was leading the Obama plan. Will you?
It seems that Obama stoked the fires of white supremacy now.
Yes, he did, but he did that by simply breathing and being black.
All right. Well, anyway, and so next up is this Trump guy. So, like I said, a subtle perception, and I haven't chased it down. It just, I haven't followed my thoughts and researched through to the end.
Okay.
All right. Just, okay. Then about this Trump guy, everything he says is a lie. Everything. Hitler's main strategy was to tell a lie, tell a big lie, keep telling it over and over again, and then the people will believe. he's got 1,000 such lies going at the same time, to get kind of overgeneralized.
Right.
So everything he says, he is basically the false prophet. And this is the false prophet nation. For 100 years, we said we're bringing democracy to Vietnam.
Right.
One case. And so America promised to make the world safe for democracy.
Do you
So
actually believe that?
That's why I use the term prophecy, because they.
Let me ask you something, Dean. How much distance is there between you and your vape pen right now?
Am I what?
Your vape pen that you use to smoke weed and weed products?
I don't have any weed at all, Jerry.
Okay. Just you sounded relaxed at home, so I just assumed you were
part
of the Cali solution.
And then I turn on the Jerry Quickley show. and
look, here's what I think, Dean. Like any time people talk about like these platitudes and announcements, America's leading the world in democracy. Okay, America's been saying that essentially since the end of World War I and 100 years ago.
Delivered on the promise once.
Right. They haven't delivered on the promise for women. They haven't delivered on the promise of people of color. They haven't delivered on the promise for the poor. They haven't delivered on the promise for people from other countries. They haven't delivered on the promise for anyone except, do you know who America has delivered on that promise for? Wealthy white people. If you're a wealthy white person in 1918 and you're from a very wealthy family, right, and wealthy white people in the 19, your life over the last 100 years has been 100 years of heaven on earth, because the entire country, all our policies, our services, our how we distribute things, when we collect money from you, everything we do has been built around an amusement park built for a handful of wealthy white people.
Yeah. Now, Jerry, I have a little bit of a personal background here. My mother's family has lived in the same house, the very same house, in Fichtelberg, Germany, for 630 years. My grandma and grandpa came here to America in 1929, and my grandpa said he could see what was coming. So I have a little bit of a background, and so because of my family background and stuff, I didn't make nothing of it. It's, no. But anyway, it's kind of unique.
Your family was smart enough to break out. They saw what was coming. They're like, hey, this don't look safe. We got to go.
So as I read a stack of books, a foot thick on Nazi Germany, when I was like in my 20s, it was an area of interest. And so I see all the same parallels happening. I see all that happening now. And then the day before Trump's State of the Union address in January, I read the first 100 pages of Mein Kampf. And oh my God, to have read it so freshly and to see the parallels, unbelievable, Jerry.
I'm gonna add a little something to that. Germany's long history, and I understand. Your family had the same home there for a long time.
We still are there.
Still there now. Well,
yep.
Back in 2000, I performed at a festival in Germany, called Lyric am Lech, meaning lyrics on the Lech River, and it's just outside of Munich. And while I was there, I met these really interesting young German people, like late teens, early 20s, and they take me around and show me their town. And they said, there was a lot of Nazi activity in this area in World War II. In the area of Landsberg. This is in Landsberg, Germany. This is where the festival was. In the area of Landsberg, there were 35 of these problems in the area. It's like, wow, there were 35 different homes that people were taken from. And he said, no, Jerry, they had 35 camps in the area of Landsberg. And he pointed across the river, and he said, you see that long wall there? And I said, yeah. And he said, that's a prison where they locked up Hitler. And he had a private villa on the grounds of the prison, and he wrote Mein Kampf there. And I was like, and it's still functioning? It's still an operating prison? And he says, yes, it is. He said, but it's filled almost exclusively with Armenians and Turks. There's almost no Germans in there. So so we actually went and visited this prison, and this young man, Daniel, and I can't remember the young woman's name, but they were these 19 and 20-year-old German youth. One happened to be Christian, one happened to be Jewish. And I was totally inspired by these kids, because they said, all right, yes, we'll go visit this prison and we'll go see where Hitler's grounds are. I was like, really? You can do that? But it's a working prison. Like, oh, it's not a problem. So my dumbass, I follow him over there. They had no access. They just started demanding of the guards, you'll give us access to the prison now because there's a cultural ambassador from the United States. He's come here for cultural reasons, and you will not hide the history of Nazis. We want access to the prison grounds now. And I have his friend like doing the translation, explaining. He's like, "Oh my God, we're going to be arrested. Oh my God, these people are going to mace us. Oh my!" But what was so deeply inspiring was this 19 and 20-year-old young people from Germany standing up in the faces of these prison guards and demanding that we get access to this prison, so that Germany is not allowed to hide its horrific history. They demanded it. Now, ultimately, they weren't successful. We didn't get access, but the fact that they just showed up and demanded, I was like, oh my God, we can learn so much in America. Our youth, we have so much to learn from each other, because I couldn't have been more inspired. Cordula, that was her name. Daniel and Cordula were the two young people in the town of Landsberg who hooked me up about the local history and showed me what it was like to be a young person with a heart who was fearless about your history and demanding that the people in your community share it. So props to Daniel and Cordula from Landsberg. Props to some of the racist people I saw in Landsberg who would stare at us like we were freaks and they paid money. And props to all the folks who are involved in making culture around the planet, making it better and reaching out. That prison that Hitler was in is now functional, but it doesn't hold Germans anymore. From what the local guides told me, over 90% of the people in that prison are Armenians and Turks. And that racial makeup of that prison speaks volumes about racism and how it's practiced in Europe right now.
And same with our prisons here.
Absolutely. No, thanks for the call, bro. I really appreciate hearing from you. Taking your calls at 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK. Let me see. Next up, let's talk to Mike calling from San Diego on line. Mike, welcome to the show. What's the dealio?
Thank you, Jerry. Always good to talk with you. You know, I'm a combat veteran of the Vietnam War. Hate war is evil. And I think that the domestic policies are a direct reflection of our foreign policy, which is not reported in mainstream media. And that's why I would say that a lot of it is fake news, because they totally ignore what the United States, the policies that are dictated around the world, what they're doing to other people around the world. For instance, we've gone into places in the Middle East and we probably slaughtered between 2 and 3 million people. We've destroyed countries, infrastructure, terrorized these people. Many of these people have had to leave their homes. Right now, there's an ongoing battle going on in Yemen, which is supported by the United States, where they've killed at least 10 to 20,000 people. It's just a disaster over there. A lot of people are starving from lack of food, and we are backing that. The same thing in Israel, where we see an ongoing massacre happening, and it's never reported. You won't hear Walt Blitzer talk about anything that's going on in the Middle East. And so most people, I go to international platforms, besides your show, of course, I go to international platforms, and they're talking about these things, and the American people have no idea what this government is doing. Right now, we're in Syria illegally, and over 500,000 people have been slaughtered in that country because of the decision that was made by Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
And none of these guys, none of these people in the deep state are ever held accountable for these massive crimes that they're committing against other people, particularly people of color in the global South. That's basically who's being attacked.
Obama brought that to us, right? That was brought to us by a black man, because when Obama got into power, he literally said, We are not going to look back in time. We're not going to be focused in the past and bringing charges against the Bush administration. We're going to be focused on our present and our future. Now, granted, yeah, of course the economy was in the crapper because in addition to destroying Iraq, George Bush and his cronies destroyed the American economy and looted it. But the fact that Obama made the announcement that we are suspending the application of laws for all of the criminals from the Bush administration. And the reason this is so significant, and I'm really glad that you brought up foreign platforms, Mike, the different platforms you can get information from, is because virtually everyone who was a Bush-level cabinet official, especially if it had anything to do with the military, with intelligence, or with security, virtually everyone from the Bush administration who was a cabinet level or even one step below an officer, almost every single one of them cannot travel abroad for fear of arrest because of the crimes against humanity they committed while serving George Bush. They're literally, we have sitting president George Bush can't travel to countries around the world because he's afraid of being arrested like Pinochet. His presidency was so violent and so illegal that the people who work for him can't travel because they'll be arrested for murder. And we treat that as a non-story here. The fact that a sitting U.S. president and his evil cabal will be arrested for murder on sight the minute they leave this country, that's one issue. The fact that it's treated like a non-story by U.S. media is goddamn obscene.
Yeah, I agree, Jared. And it's, I follow that situation over in Syria, and I'm sorry to say that the Russians have done a great job de-escalating that conflict, and a lot of the people all the refugees that left and went abroad or wherever, they're coming back into the country, and they've done it by creating deconfliction zones, humanitarian zones where the civilians were allowed to leave. And then when they had the jihadists, the Tekfiris, all these guys that were being supported by Turkey, the United States and their allies and NATO forces and the Gulf states and Israel, all these guys were then given an option. Either you surrender or we're going to wipe you guys out. So they allowed these guys to leave these areas and they put them in other areas. The Russians have done a magnificent job in de-escalating that war that the United States initiated against the people of Syria. And as I mentioned, over 500,000 people have been killed over in Syria, and many of their population, I think 12 million people, were dislocated when that war started, I think, in 2015. So that's one of the reasons why you see, in my opinion, the deep state have so much hatred for Russia. There's other things going on as well, but Donald Trump is a very evil racist. He says one thing and he does another thing. For instance,
before you go on to Trump, I want to circle back briefly to Syria and just say that the process you describe as de-escalation that the Russians have engaged in was the buttressing of and supporting of Bashar al-Assad. And he is most assuredly a monster. He's most assuredly a horrific mass murderer. That doesn't separate him from many people on the globe. But the de-escalation, so to speak, has come by Assad's forces ramping up their murder game and taking more territory and punishing the people who live in those territories who may or may not have been against Assad. And the only point that I'm making is that what's happening in Syria is deeply complex, and part of the de-escalation that has calmed things down, that has come at the cost of dead bodies. There are dead children in Syria. There are dead mothers and grandparents that paid the cost for this de-escalation. It is not just, it is not sustainable, and it is deeply problematic.
Yeah. And, you have to ask yourself the question, what gives Barack Obama or anyone else in America the right to say that a leader of a sovereign country has to step down? They did that in Libya, and look at the situation over in Libya now. It's a basket case. It'll take that country a long time to recover. And when we went into Libya and destroyed that country, that created a massive refugee problem whereby a lot of those people from northern Africa went to Europe, and now you have these right-wing elements which are being supported by many of Donald Trump's circle, many people in Donald Trump's circle. As a matter of fact, Steve Bannon is over there right now chumming around with these right-wing elements. And these are the people that are saying that we don't want these Africans or these other people of color in our country, when they actually caused the situation, because Gaddafi told them initially, before they started that onslaught in Libya, that if he was removed from office, it would create a massive refugee problem for Europe. And he was right. And so, and not only that,
these refugee problems that are self-generated, these are crises that we are participating, we are generating. And you're right, this is massive refugee problems. Some 3 or 4 million refugees in total over a period of 5 or 6 years. That's nothing compared to what's coming, because as environmental systems collapse, and there is no water or no safe water for people to drink and feed their children, etc. Europe is contiguously connected to the Middle East and Asia. And as the Himalayas collapse, and 80% of the world's population is in Asia, and as those glaciers collapse that feed that water to all of Asia, and those folks, as literally hundreds of millions, in excess of 1 billion people, maybe 2 billion, maybe 3 billion, will have to flee and migrate. Now, think of all the problems and drama that was created by 4 million refugees over a period of 5 years in Europe. Now, instead of 4 million, imagine 3 billion. We have to fix what we're doing. The pending environmental collapse that is coming will make the very real problems that you're talking about, these politically generated refugee crisis, will be a day that was remembered fondly, and a problem that we could cope with. And the distance between us and environmental collapse is not very great. When I say not very great, I'm talking about under 20 years, maybe under 10 years. We have to go about fixing the environment like our hair was on fire.
I got you. I agree with that, Jerry. Now, hopefully, my point is that, like I said, I was in the military, and the military is glorified in this country. Most people, when I call the White House occasionally, people say to me, "Thank you for your service." And I say to them, do you have any idea the service that I imparted on this foreign land when I was in Vietnam? We did a lot of nasty things over there, and this is what the service people are doing to other human beings. I live in San Diego, and I always imagine what it would be like if people walking around here with their strollers, with their kids, going to school, doing what they normally would do on an everyday basis, how it would feel if little Johnny was flying a jet and dropping bombs and missiles and mortars on their towns and cities and killing their kids. Because that's exactly what we do when we go into these other countries. And the architects of these nasty, evil, savage wars are never held accountable for the crimes, the massive crimes that they're committing. Somebody like Netanyahu can walk into the White House at any time, go into the Congress and get 29 standing ovations, and this guy should be in prison somewhere awaiting a trial and be hung for the crimes that he's committing against the Palestinian people. These are some of the most evil people on the planet, and we're not holding these people accountable for these massive genocides.
You're right. Mike from San Diego, I want to thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for sharing your opinion with us, brother. Let's give a listen to this next clip. This is Sarah Huckabee Sanders at White House press conference. Thanks for the call, Mike. And she's asked a question: why won't Trump stand up to Russia?
Following up on that question, the president has very forcefully spoken out against Iran. He's very forcefully spoken out against North Korea. He has said that he will forcefully speak out against any threat to the United States. Russian election interference is a threat to our democracy. Why will he not forcefully denounce that?
The president has been incredibly tough on Russia. Since day one in office has been extremely tough on Russia, probably more so than with any other country. John?
Sarah. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah. He's been tougher than anyone in the history of the country who was engaged in phone sex with Vladimir Putin. Trump was in fact tougher than any single U.S. president on Russia while operating a Russian glory hole. Trump was in fact the most difficult, the hardest, worst man on Russia since Vladimir Putin's mother. It's ridiculous. Taking your calls, 818-985-5735, 818-985-KPFK. Next up, let's talk to Marcellus calling from Pasadena. Marcellus, welcome to the show. What's the deal, yo?
First-time caller. Thanks for the great program and yourself. I'm from New York as well.
Thanks, brother.
I just want to make a comment that the previous one of the previous people mentioned Neely Fuller and Dr. Frances Welsing.
Mm-hmm.
She died last year. She was a psychiatrist and out of Howard, I think, and she wrote a paper that around the world, her research shows that white people have the same symptom of racism and that racism should be treated as a mental illness.
I tend to agree. I think it's almost like a virus. It definitely rises to the level of mental illness, and I think that I gotta get up on her knowledge and her work because it sounds interesting to me just from the little bit you've talked about it.
Yeah, her book is called ISIS Papers, not ISIS in Iraq, but that's the name of her book, called ISIS Papers. She was a very militant psychiatrist. And Dr. Neely Fuller, I think he's from the Midwest somewhere. He's a light-skinned black, and we used to have conferences out here in the 90s. Esalen Bookstore and Aquarium Bookstore, they would have Dr. Leonard Jeffries from City College in New York, Dr. Ben Jacomin from another college in New York, Hunter, I think. But anyway, I want to say, and Neely Fuller, I think he said that he could pass for white, and he said, you'd be surprised what white men talk about when they're in the barbershop. They be talking about how many black women they screwed. And then it was also mentioned that it's a rite of passage in some areas in this country for a white boy to rape a black woman.
Yeah, there really is an absolutely horrific history associated with that. I can't remember the name of the documentary, but there's a documentary that just came out on Niecy Reese, I believe the woman's name, who was she was a survivor of a horrific and brutal sexual assault in the American South, and what was common in the American South from slaveholding times through the 1960s. Literally through the 1960s and even into the 70s, what was common for young white men coming of age is that they would get in a car with some of their friends, and in order to know that they could be effective and perform and be experienced in sex, they wouldn't start having sex with a white sexual partner. They would get in a car and they drive down the road, and they'd find a young black woman or a young black child alone. They would then kidnap this young black woman or child and sexually assault the woman in a gang attack. And the reason that this was done was because it gave young white men a person to practice on before they had to actually attempt to use their sexuality on a full human being, a white person. And this was a common, broad practice in the South that was carried out not hundreds of times, not thousands of times, but millions and millions of times over years. Young white men getting into cars, hunting for black children and women to rape on the roads of the American South. There's an excellent documentary. There's an excellent documentary on Reese Taylor, I believe the woman's name was. I have the name of the documentary before the show's over. It was powerful and engaging, and because it covered this horrific epic in American history, and the fact that it was the rape of Reese Taylor, and is the name of the documentary, and it covered this horrific period that simply no one wants to discuss. No one wants to discuss that young white men in the South made a habit of going out, stalking, kidnapping, and gang raping black children and young black women. But if we don't, this is one of the reasons we need a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, because if we don't review our horrific and tortured history, we can't move past it by pretending it didn't happen, because there's still victims, haunted, hollowed out, walking around.
Thank you. And the Neely Fuller's book is called The Codes.
The Coles, okay. Thank you so much.
No, CODE, the code.
COD, the code. Thank you so much. Thank you for turning me on to the book and some of her work. I'm looking forward to reading more about the sister. She sounds absolutely brilliant. Taking your calls, 818-985-5735. That's 818-985-KPFK. Try to squeeze in a couple more calls real quick. Next up, let's talk to Bill calling from Santa Monica. Bill, 30 seconds or less. What's the dealio?
Hey, Jerry. Thing about Trump telling his people not to take listen to any media. Have you ever met any of those people? I mean, they don't listen to anything but Rush Limbaugh anyway. They don't read any New York Times, the LA Times, the Washington Post. I mean, what's he talking about? They're the same people who signed up for Trump University. They're the same personalities. I know some of them, and they're as dumb as hell. He's wasting his breath telling them not to listen or read any media. They don't.
Right. As long as he keeps promising to harm the niggers, they're going to follow him.
That's right.
Well, thanks for the call, buddy. Appreciate hearing from you. Next up, let's talk to Mario. Mario's calling from Long Beach. Mario, 30 seconds or less. What's the dealio?
What's the dealio?
How you doing?
Jerry. Yeah. Do you know the term villain?
Yeah. He's a villain.
A villain? Chilling like a villain? No, it comes actually. The villas in Europe.
Yeah.
And this term kidnapping. And like the children would be weren't allowed to get out, and the Moors that were in control of Europe at that time were considered these villains, or these knights that would come up and steal children, or just claim them. They were like knights on horses and the peasants.
For the purpose of what?
Oh, for labor.
Okay, right. Essentially to enslave children.
Enslave children, yeah. And yeah, I didn't know. Have you heard of that? And another thing.
I hadn't heard of that part of Moorish history. I can't dispute it because I just don't have knowledge of it, but I do.
Well, in the Constitution, the Constitution, it talks about. I mean, because you can't make a constitutional claim and say, they pulled me over and they took me out. It's really.
Wait, I'm sorry, Mario. I'm losing you, buddy. Because when I can't even. I'll just try to list in my head the 8 different things we talked about in those 40 seconds. I can't even get it straight. The Moors and child kidnapping and villains and villas and the Fed. So. How far are you from your vape pen? I want to thank everybody for calling in today. I want to thank you for helping us pilot this ship out of the swamp and into the stars. If you want to follow us online, you can using the handle @JerryQuickley on Twitter. Again, that's @JerryQuickley on Twitter. And you can also check out all episodes of the show online at soundcloud.com/THLive, soundcloud.com/THLive. The show is produced by myself, Jose Benavidez. And that's it, y'all. Until tomorrow, I'm out.